Welcome back to our channel. We will take you into a world filled with tension, mystery, and breathtaking battles between good and evil, where every assumption can be overturned in just a moment in Beyond the Gates. No one in that small town could have guessed that a seemingly tragic car accident would be the opening step for a revenge plan meticulously planned down to the last detail. Dani, a seemingly weak woman, who had been a victim of domestic violence for many years, was now the one who controlled the fate of those who had caused her pain. When the silver car lost control, crashed into the median, spun several times before flipping down the hillside, everyone thought it was a tragic accident. Blood soaked through the leather seats. The airbags deployed but could not save the powerful impact. Dani was found unconscious, her body covered in wounds. Her hand still clutching the silver necklace she had worn since her wedding day, a keepsake that had once been a symbol of love, but now a cruel curse tied to pain. When she was taken to the hospital, doctors diagnosed Dani with a mild brain injury, broken ribs, and signs of severe psychological shock. But what no one expected was that beneath her immobile appearance, inside Dani's mind was a plan nurtured by blood, tears, and anger that had been suppressed for many years. She was not simply a victim of that accident. She was the one who triggered it. Many years ago, Dani was a young girl full of hope, believing in good things. Her marriage to a seemingly kind man initially seemed like a dream. But that dream quickly turned into a nightmare as his true nature was revealed, controlling, humiliating, and violent. She had run away, begged, and kept quiet. But in the end, the only thing she kept were the memories of sleepless nights, the bruises she had to hide under makeup, and the silence of those around her when they knew but did not intervene. Dani understood that the law was not enough to protect her. She had filed for protection, called the police during her panic nights, but he still came home with a threatening look and a mocking smile. Dani's belief in justice gradually faded. She began to think about ending it all herself. Not by leaving, but by making the person who caused all the suffering pay the same price he had imposed on her, bloody and cruel. The accident was not an accident. It was the result of a chain of events that Dani had planned months in advance. She had deliberately drained the car's brakes during secret maintenance, adjusted the dashcam to record only part of the story, and arranged to be with him on a familiar route, one with no security cameras and no passers-by. But what had not been planned was that Dani herself had survived, while the other man had disappeared without a trace from the scene. Police believed that he had been thrown from the car, landed in the dense forest below, and was probably dead. But there was no body, no blood, no obvious trace other than a piece of clothing stuck to a tree branch. This made the accident all the more mysterious and inexplicable. While the authorities investigated, Dani lay in the hospital with a blank expression, as if she were suffering a terrible shock. When in fact she was waiting. Not waiting for recovery, but for evidence that he was indeed dead or worse, alive, and plotting revenge. From her hospital bed, Dani began to rebuild her network of control. She requested a private room, installed hidden cameras, and barred all unauthorized visitors. She refused all inquiries from her husband's family, who had previously turned their backs on her because of their family name. At the same time, she hired a private investigation team to secretly search for any sign of the man's existence. While the doctors were busy treating her injuries, she was waging a war in the shadows. The town began to buzz with rumors. Some said Dani had deliberately killed herself. Some thought her husband had killed her and fled, but she was still alive. Others whispered that Dani was hiding something. Whatever the truth, one thing is undeniable: she is no longer a victim. Her silence, the cold and determined look in the cloudy eyes of someone recovering, all evoke a vague fear in the hearts of those who once knew her. While the investigation remains inconclusive, a series of strange events begin to unfold. Medical staff report that someone has snuck into Dani's hospital room at night, leaving a short, unsigned note that reads, "I'm still alive." The cameras don't pick up anything. The door isn't broken. No one has seen a stranger enter or leave the hospital. The police think it's a prank. But Dani doesn't think so. She believes that her abusive husband is still alive and playing a new game, this time as a predator in the shadows. From here, Dani's original plan for revenge begins to morph into a real battle for survival. She no longer has control over everything as before. The feeling of being watched, the strange noises at night, the empty calls in the middle of the night, all put her on high alert. But instead of being afraid, Dani began to adapt. She knew that to win this game, she had to become a different version of herself, cold, ruthless, and ready to strike first. From the day Dani woke up, the atmosphere around her was no longer the chaos of an accident, but a dense spider web of secrets, suspicions, and dangers. She trusted no one anymore. The nurses who smiled gently, the doctors with reassuring tones, all could be pawns in a larger game that she had yet to see the whole picture of. The anonymous letter was not only a reminder that he was alive, but also a declaration of war. Dani hired a secret bodyguard, the only one she had personally recruited through a connection in the underworld. He had no clear identity, no record, no history. She didn't want a good man, she wanted someone who was absolutely loyal and didn't ask questions. She called him Mason, her real name was unknown. Mason not only protected Dani, but also did the outside work, tracking, investigating, covering her tracks. She set up a surveillance center in her room, connected to hidden cameras throughout the hospital hallways, the parking lot, and the forested area where the accident occurred. She turned the recovery room into a command center for a war that no one in town knew was going on. Dani knew from local news reports that the police had suspended the search for her husband. They claimed there was no sign of him alive, and that he had probably been dragged away by wild animals after the crash. But Dani's instincts were never wrong. He wasn't someone who would die so easily. She knew him better than anyone, his tenacity, his cunning, his ability to survive in the most extreme conditions. If he were alive, he would stop at nothing to destroy her again. A week later, Mason reported finding an old shack, hidden deep in the woods, about 2 miles from the crash site. There was no one inside, but there were signs of someone living there, dried blood on the bandages, an empty food can, and a map of the area with a red circle marking the hospital. In the dim light, a handwritten note was taped to the wall, scrawled but sharp, "You think it's that easy?" Every cell in Dani's body tensed. The memories of his face, of his blind rage, of his hand around her neck when no one was watching, all came rushing back like a tidal wave. But this time, she didn't back down. She orders Mason to search the security cameras around the forest, to trace transactions at nearby stores, and most importantly, to penetrate hospital records for signs of who might have broken in during the night. It was during this process that Dani discovered something surprising. A new nurse named Celine, with no clear profile, no image on the recognition system. She was always present on the night shift, quiet, taciturn, and especially, always entered Dani's room in the middle of the night. Through hidden cameras, Dani saw Celine often lean close to her face, whispering something before leaving. Once, she even stood still for more than 5 minutes, just looking at Dani's face while the heart monitor continued to beat steadily. Dani had Mason monitor Celine. A few days later, a shocking discovery was brought back: Celine did not exist in the medical records. Her identity belonged to someone who had died 2 years earlier in another state. All the paperwork, the degrees, the resumes, they were all fake. Which could only mean one thing: someone had planted her to get close to Dani. And only one person had the motive, the means, and the vengeance to do it. Meanwhile, Mason had uncovered a chilling clue: a bank account that had once belonged to her husband had a small transfer, just $1, made from a terminal near the hospital. The transfer was small enough to go undetected by the bank's automated system, but it was a sure sign of existence. Dani knew she had no time. She ordered the hospital to be evacuated and moved to another location, an abandoned house outside of town that she had rented in advance, just in case. In the shadows, she built a fortress of technology and hatred. Every room was equipped with sensors, defensive weapons, and a place to store all the files on her ex-husband, habits, places he had been, acquaintances, connections he could exploit. She was no longer a runaway wife. She was a warrior who had died once in marriage and now lived again with a single purpose: to erase the man who had made her disappear from her own life. But what Dani didn't expect was that her enemy was one step ahead. One night, the camera system around the house went off for exactly 13 seconds, enough time for someone to sneak in and leave a small knife wound on the bedroom door. There was no sound, no intrusion. Just a knife mark carved into the wood, a circle with a diagonal line, the symbol he had once carved into her wrist in a fit of rage, as if to mark ownership. This was no longer a game. This was a hunt. From then on, Dani knew she couldn't just defend. She had to attack. Over the next few days, she discovered more and more scattered details, all leading to a single conclusion. He was very close. Not in the woods. Not in the shadows. But among the people around her, with a new face, a different identity, and a revenge plan more elaborate than ever. If you're drawn to the story and want to discover the next mysterious part, follow and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next episodes that will be even darker, more surprising, and more haunting. We'll be back with new chapters, where the light at the end of the tunnel may not be the exit, but the eyes of someone waiting for you to step forward.